And now it's January 2023 when these short episodes are released. Still doing readings of blog posts of mine. Blog posts you can find at tankespjan.com along with hundreds of other blog posts. We are approaching the end of this, but not just yet. But season 4 of the Meandering Conversations of Tankespjan with Helena Roch, they are coming closer. But just yet. I'm an upholder. You? First published on tankespjan.com as a blog post on September 24th, 2017. Listening to Jonathan Fields in conversation with his longtime friend Gretchen Rubin, author of The Happiness Project, if you've read that book, I enjoyed it. This conversation centers around the 4 tendencies, something which Gretchen apparently touched on in one of her earlier books, and then dove deeper into, making it the topic for her current book, The 4 Tendencies, a book I most definitely want to read after listening to this podcast. The 4 Tendencies centers on how we as human beings relate to inner and outer expectations, being prone to or resisting one or the other. The 4 tendencies are given names: upholder, obliger, questioner, rebel. More than 800,000 people have taken Gretchen's simple online test to get a feel for one's own core tendency, and I turned out to be an upholder. Not surprising, just from the podcast itself, I felt the most connected to this tendency, and the online test confirmed it. As I listened to the podcast over and over again, clarity arises. Clarity in why I'm good at keeping promises to myself, such as meditating every morning and doing my daily 7, such as promising myself to practice the guitar for 20 minutes a day for 60 days. And following through. But also towards others, meeting deadlines, keeping promises, getting the job done. Clarity in why some people struggle with things that come naturally to me, because I can see other tendencies in them, giving me a greater understanding in what makes them tick one way or another, which might make me become a better coach, mother, business partner, or friend in the future. Clarity as to how the assignment to make people better at motivating others isn't about what works for me, but rather about the 4 ways there are to have people gain the most traction from their own inner driving forces. An upholder meets both inner and outer expectations. For a questioner, understanding why is central, making them meet their own inner expectations. The obliger struggles and fails to meet inner expectations, but readily meets outer ones. And at last, the rebel, resisting both outer and inner expectations, which to me sounds really tricky. I mean, what remains then? Spur of the moment, I guess. If we all knew our own tendencies and had sufficient knowledge about the other 3, for sure that would make a huge difference in any setting we find ourselves in. At school, at work, with the closest family, with friends. Knowing my own tendency, which is actually quite rare, which means what works for me won't necessarily work for you. And if you and I both have some knowledge about our respective core tendencies, perhaps there's a greater opportunity for us to find common ground, to be able to stand by one another, being there for each other in ways that are truly helpful. I'm an upholder with leanings towards questioner, I think. The online test doesn't dig deep enough for me to truly distinguish the nuances in great detail. I'm hoping the book will. What are you? That's where the blog posts end, but I want to add a little bit because several things has happened since I wrote this in 2017. One is I'm quite deliberately trying to break my strong upholder tendencies because I can have such strong tendencies that I actually break myself. So I am going for the rebel aspect more and more, deliberately trying to feel into if what I'm sort of supposed to do according to my upholder tendency, if I actually want to do that, if it serves me in the moment. And as a result of that, I no longer say that I'm an upholder because I don't want to identify that strongly with it, but I can say that I have upholder tendencies, which I certainly still do. And I also want to make sure that you understand that tests like this, first and foremost, it's about getting to know yourself and no one else. But it can be helpful in getting to know others or understanding others, but never, ever as a tool to judge, to, get stuck in your own preconceived notion, because that's not what these are meant for. That's not how they are helpful. But as a mirror for me to look into, can be really helpful. So I do recommend you do the test. You'll find it in the show notes.